I think you should take out more debt on your investment properties. And Dave Ramsey's probably squirming and all those investors that don't like debt. But to me, there is good debt and there is bad debt. So in this video, I wanted to have a conversation about why I think having more debt can actually be less risky than having less debt. Now, I can already hear you thinking, Luke, you need to explain yourself. What on earth are you talking about? Now, I'm actually going through the process of taking out more debt against my investment properties rather than less debt. And the main reason for that, the most major one, is liquidity and flexibility, essentially. The reason it's so important is, let's look at two people. They both got a property worth $1 million. Now, one individual has paid that debt right down and they've only got $200,000 left. The other individual also has paid their debt right down to $200,000, but decides to go back to the bank and draw up another $600,000 worth of investment debt, taking them to $800,000 worth of debt in reality. But the thing is, they've also got $600,000 parked in the offset account. And this is where, in my opinion, carrying more debt in terms of the actual exposure that you've got is less risky than carrying less debt. Because again, we look at those two scenarios. The individual that's got $200,000 of debt and no access or no line of credit essentially is hamstrung if they lose their job, if they get sick, if they have a major family issue. They do not have any other cash to access. Whereas the other individual now has $600,000 sitting in their offset account. Yes, they've still got the $200,000 worth of original debt. And yes, they've now given themselves a debt exposure of essentially $800,000 against their property. This was in the olden days called a line of credit. Now, in my opinion, having access to this debt is the key to seeing people grow and scale successful property portfolios. Without the banks and brokers working with you, there's no way, if you haven't got any money, there's going to be no movement in that property portfolio, and you're simply not going to be able to buy the assets to hold over a long period of time and create generational wealth, essentially. And so I'm going through this process at the moment where I'm drawing up as much debt as possible so I can use those funds for investment purposes and essentially create more net worth by doing projects, and also create more cash flow by, again, adding value to the property market by creating new rental supply and new stock by working with a builder to build some secondary dwellings. Now, that is the first major and probably the most important point, in my opinion, as to why you should take out more debt, and that is the liquidity piece. The other piece I wanted to mention is the debt recycling. So let's go back to that first example where we're talking about the debt being drawn out. Let's say that's from their own home. And so you've got the individual with the 200K and doesn't want to draw up any more debt because they want to pay off their own home. Isn't that what we all want to do? And then you've got the second investor who's willing to draw up another $600,000 to give themselves an 80% LVR. And so this individual's got the $200,000 of debt that's non-deductible on their own home, the $600,000 worth of debt that is deductible, and that also gives them $600,000 worth of cash that they can then go and use as a deposit or even straight outright buy an investment property with those funds. And that enables what we call debt recycling, turning bad debt, or what would have been bad debt because it was secured against your own home, and then using the security of your own home or your principal place of residence to take out debt and use those funds for investment purposes, which is essentially a tax deduction here in Australia. This has been talked about a fair few times over the years, known as debt recycling. So if you've never heard of that concept before, maybe go and watch a separate video on that in some more detail. The third major point for me is that deductibility. It's the tax outcomes of having investment assets. And this is what people complain about in the US of Trump and Elon Musk and different high net worth individuals. And a lot of Australian business owners will do this, where they take out debt and they use debt as their resource and as their tool to maximize their interest deductions and to buy assets, because the debt is going to be inflated away over time. We know that the Reserve Bank is looking for a target inflation of 2 to 3%. And what that means is we're, as an Australian society, willing to devalue your money every year by 2 to 3%. That's the goal. The goal is that that $100 note is worth 2 to 3% less every year. And so if that's exactly what our government and Reserve Bank is saying to us as the public, then that to me means cash is not good to hold over a long period of time. And I want to be able to use debt to my advantage to hold good assets. Now, I'm not talking about credit cards or personal loans or car loans or holidays or any of those things. I specifically only like taking out and carrying more debt when it gives me cash in the offset, or when I'm using that debt to control an asset like property, which has capital growth potential and cash flow potential over a long period of time. This is not a get rich quick scheme. This is a 5, 7, 10, 15-year time horizon to build net worth, to build your family some more choices, and to buy the right opportunities. Oh, and one more point on this, because I hadn't mentioned it and it is actually quite important, is funnily enough, you can use the debt that you've drawn up for interest repayments. This is essentially known as capitalizing the loan, but I don't want to go into more detail. I think this video is fine where it is. But yeah, that's a really interesting point as well, that you can use those funds essentially to make repayments and give yourself a massive cash buffer. Anyway, I love making this content and bringing you guys some more information about real estate, renovating, and financial freedom. Give this video a click over here, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.